be a psychiatrist, allegedly stood up in a crowded room, shouted Allah Akbar, God is great in Arabic, and opened fire. John Quinones is live at Fort Hood outside Killeen, Texas tonight. John.
Elizabeth, I'm here at 3 Corps headquarters, very close to the processing center where yesterday's massacre took place. Today, 2020 was given exclusive access to secure areas of this sprawling base where we visited some of the wounded and their families. We pieced together a timeline of what really happened and discovered some amazing stories of luck, survival, and heroism.
Peggy McCarty has an appointment with a miracle. We're driving with her across the vast expanse of Fort Hood, where she's going to see her daughter, Kira, a survivor of yesterday's attack here.
How do you feel, Peggy?
I'm very nervous.
Past the prairies, past soldiers returning to their duties after the blackest day imaginable yesterday.
I just want to see her, and I know that she's going through so much.
It takes us some time to find out where we're going, but we finally locate Kira's barracks and wait outside. Peggy is waiting with Joe Torkelson, Kira's new husband. Just 6 weeks ago, they were all together at their wedding. Now it's another kind of joy. A bullet grazed Kira in the head, and she was also shot in the back. And she's convinced, were it not for what she was wearing around her neck yesterday, she would be dead.
My grandma gave me this necklace on Halloween. It's a guardian angel necklace.
She gave you this, your grandmother, before you left.
Yes.
And you think this might have done something?
I think so.
How would you describe your wife?
Beautiful, amazing.
And tough, you say?
Tough, yeah.
The family is thrilled, but like so many others tonight, the Bonos are struggling to come to terms with what exactly happened here.
This was an American soldier.
Just stood up, apparently, stood up and just started opening fire for what reason, you know, because he didn't want to go. Well, a lot of people don't want to do a lot of things, but it's something, it's part of life. You gotta.
Why would you turn on your fellow soldiers like that when you're supposed to be there to protect them? And, you know, sorry.
Tonight, doctors say she will be fine, but the family knows it could have been so much worse.
The other soldiers that are in her unit that were not as fortunate as Kira, you know, our hearts go out to them.
Tonight, they're hearing from Kira a gripping first-hand version of what took place.
How would you describe what you've been through?
It was something I've never been through before. It's the craziest thing I've ever had to experience, so.
At about 1 p.m., Major Nidal Malik Hassan arrives at this readiness center and sits down amongst 40 to 50 people waiting here.
And the man stood up and he said, Allah Akbar, or something of that sort. And he started firing. And
at around 1:20, for several minutes, chaos. Armed SWAT teams run to the scene. Ambulances are dispatched. Sirens blare.
Take shelter immediately. Close doors and windows.
Inside, Kira is in the midst of terror.
How long did it continue, the shooting?
it seemed like it would never end. It seemed like he was just firing over and over again. I really couldn't see his face because the flash of his muzzle, I could see the flash from his weapon, and I'm sure one of the first couple shots he fired off is what grazed the top of my head.
If Kira was an inch taller, she'd likely be dead now. She runs for her life, not even aware that Hassan has shot her in the back.
What is going through your head?
What I was thinking about, for the truth, was my husband. So, and I really thought that was the end.
Amazingly, a friend of hers is able to actually pull the bullet from her body. And even more amazing is what happens next.
She jumps in the ambulance and tries to drive it.
Yes. We drove about 20, 25 feet, and I hear her say, "Where do I go?" And I looked in there, I was like, "Specialist James," if you knew it. And
she was driving the ambulance?
So wow. One of the EMTs had to get out and switch places with her.
1:23 p.m. 911 calls are coming in. Kimberly Munley, a civilian police officer and mother of a 3-year-old and a 14-year-old, is directing traffic elsewhere on the base. She responds. It's now around 1:27 p.m.
She fired on him twice and drew the attention toward her. He immediately spun around and charged her. She fired a couple more rounds, fell to her back, continued to fire.
Today, this woman, 5'2", is being hailed as a giant hero.
She is a shorter person. She packs a lot of power behind that. Kim definitely acted courageous. She is a fine example of a law enforcement officer.
In all the confusion, Hassan is at first reported to have been killed, but in fact he's alive and unconscious. 2 p.m., the military declares the situation under control. Hassan is transported to the very same hospital where many of his victims are already arriving. Tonight, Hassan is reported to be paralyzed and on a ventilator.
I hope he heals up so he can explain why he did it. I mean, I don't know if he ever will. I mean, it would give a lot of people a, sense of direction on what went down.
By the time Kira and her family meet today, you'd hardly know anything was wrong with her. It is truly incredible.
What do you hope happens to him if he survives?
I don't really know. That's, I know that he'll have his own judgment, and no matter what God he believes in, I know he'll have his own judgment. And I can't judge him. Hope he gets what he deserves.
How many of the dead did you know?
Quite a few.
And it was a tough day today.
It was a very emotional day.
Tough day. Kira also told me that seeing how her fellow soldiers performed under fire gives her all the confidence in the world that she'll be well protected when she gets to Iraq. We'll also learn tonight that a memorial service for the victims is planned for next week. Elizabeth.
All right, John, thanks so much. So what was the tipping point that turned this doctor, a man of healing, into alleged mass killer? ABC Chief Investigative Correspondent Brian Ross has found some possible answers.
It was 10 months ago tonight in Washington. The top officials gathered to talk about stopping another terror attack.
Welcome. We see
among the participants, Major Nidal Malik Hasan, a vocal opponent of the war in Iraq at the session, and now accused of the worst terror attack in this country since September 11th.
I'm convinced that he was operating alone at Fort Hood on the military base, carrying out this horrendous act of murder and treason.
Tonight, officials are struggling to learn why the 39-year-old American of Palestinian descent apparently snapped.
I think this is a gradual progression, like many people who end up being mass murderers.
As authorities searched his apartment near Fort Hood for clues, neighbors talked of what now seemed like obvious warning signs. He gave away all his furniture this week, all his worldly goods, to a lady down the block.
And he just gave her all that free of charge.
Hassan had begun to dress in traditional Middle Eastern garb. This was him yesterday morning at a 7-Eleven on a video obtained by CNN.
He was actually in his garb. I don't know what they call them, the outfits.
In August, this Killeen, Texas gun store, Guns Galore, legally sold the semi-automatic pistol Hassan would use. The gun holds 20 bullets in a clip and is so powerful that law enforcement officials call it the cop killer, perfect for a mass murderer.
He must have been very intent on shooting as many people as possible.
Hassan had been trying without success to get out of the Army and was fighting his deployment to Afghanistan, leading to what he said was hazing and racial mockery with terms like camel jockey.
You're alienated, you're seen as a cast out, you're looked at as weak and not wanted around.
Despite his attempt to leave the Army and poor performance reviews at his previous posting at the Walter Reed Hospital in Washington, Hassan was promoted to Major this year. The Army would not let him go after paying for his medical education.
He's subject to military orders. They could pretty much do what they wanted to with him.
Thursday, it became too much for Major Hassan, who apparently planned to become a martyr, a plan that would fail. The FBI, as well as military and Texas police, are now gathering the evidence to put Hassan on trial for murder. Elizabeth?
Brian, there seem to be so many red flags that were missed here. We have that poor performance review. He was reprimanded for proselytizing about his Muslim faith and for alcohol abuse. Why did nobody see that perhaps this man was in trouble and needed some help?
That's the very question being asked by Army officials and members of Congress. It may expose a larger problem in the military, the failure to detect those people under intense stress.
We have heard General Casey today say several times that the military is under an enormous strain with these deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan. Have we reached a point where we're putting people out there in the field who shouldn't be there, have no business being there?
This seems to be one example of just what you're talking about, indeed.
Is there any action at all perhaps to be taken in the future about this?
I think we'll be hearing a lot about that issue. How much can this Army take?
All right, Brian Ross with that angle of the story. Thanks so much.